All right. Good morning again, everybody. Welcome back. I know you're enjoying your breakfast. So we are ready to get started here this morning. We have a couple of new friends that I want to introduce to you on our serving team. So just wanted to introduce, because I like you all to know who's here and who's volunteering, because I'm so grateful. So Lauren, would you say hello? Lauren Reed has been on our serving team as a small group leader for years, and she took a sabbatical. It turned into a sabbatical, but she is back. So we are so thankful. So I wanted you to know that Lauren is here. And also we have another, a couple who weren't here last year on our serving team. Nancy, you can say hi. Nancy Hetlinger-Arnold is here. And also Julie Altizer is here, my friend. You guys, another one of my friends from way back when in Real Moms, who we've been dear friends, and we were having dinner last week. I had friends with my Real Moms group that had been together for 14 years or something last week, and Julie said, I'm looking for places to volunteer, and I was like, oh, I got one for you. Come volunteer with me, so I'm thankful. So thank you all for being here. A couple of quick announcements. You all found your way here. On your tables today are a couple of handouts for the people who like paper. And for the people who are good with digital handouts, everything is in the app. If you didn't get the new app update yet, there are QR codes on the table. There are places in the app for you to take notes as well. So if you like to take digital notes, you can. And then everybody should have a workbook. So there should be a workbook, handout, or app for you. And then there are instructions for downloading the new app if you need that and haven't gotten that yet. On the back of your handout, the paper handout, is homework. We have a little bit of homework for each of the next 3 weeks as part of our Calling Quilt workshop. In the app, it just has this week's homework, and then we'll make sure you have the homework for each week in the app. So you'll use this paper handout for all the weeks. So you can just tuck that in your workbook and make sure you bring your workbook back next week, because I know you're going to want to use the pages for your notes. All right, I think that is it. Does anybody have any questions or concerns about any of that? Anything I'm forgetting that I need to tell? I always have to ask, am I forgetting anything that I need to tell you? Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you. Well, I would like to introduce to you Dave Rodriguez, who is going to be our teacher and speaker for the next 4 weeks in the Calling Quilt workshop. Dave is the executive director and founder of Destiny Works, Inc. He's an author, speaker, consultant, and personal coach. For more than 40 years, Dave has served as a pastor in churches on the East Coast, but most of that time was spent here because he is the founding pastor of Grace Church. And he was here for, how many years were you here? 29 years. Dave was our lead pastor, senior pastor here for 29 years. And after he retired from here, went on to form Destiny Works and travels all over the country-ish, teaching and helping people find their calling, realize who God created them to be. And so it is a real gift to have Dave here. His education was through the University of Pittsburgh and Moody Theological Seminary in Chicago. He also has an honorary doctorate from Taylor University. Dave has been happily married to Penny for 45 years. He loves and is proud of his adult children, one of whom is Barry Rodriguez, our current lead pastor here at Grace, and his daughter as well. And then, of course, grandkids. He has 2 grandkids. When he's not coaching, writing, or speaking, you'll find Dave enjoying music of all kinds or indulging in his hobby of cooking. So it is a gift, as I mentioned last week, for Dave to be here with us and to offer us this workshop as part of our Mom's Life curriculum for the semester. So will you help me welcome Dave, please? Thank you. And also, I'm going to pray, too. So you can stand up here with me while we pray. Lord, I praise you for Dave and for the way you have worked in his life and for all that you have shown him, Lord. Thank you that he's willing to share that with us. Lord, I just pray that you would be in this place, fill us with your spirit, and speak to us. Help us to hear what it is that you have for us each to hear today and over the next few weeks as we dig in to the topic of calling. I just praise you in Jesus' name. Amen.
All right? You have me? All right. You were built to count as water is made to run downhill. You were placed in a context to count in ways that no one else does, and that is your destiny. Now, that quote by Dallas Willard essentially is all we're going to be talking about in some way, shape, or form for the next 4 sessions we're together. That's loaded with heavy thoughts. You were built. In other words, unseen hands formed you as you are. We believe that to be God. You were created by God. He knew you, we'll get to that in a minute, before you even had a body or a personality. There was something about you that is even more ancient than that. I'll talk about that in a minute. But you were built to count. You were built to matter in ways that no one else does. There is a uniqueness to you that is only yours. And that all together points to a destiny. And I want you to know, we're going to define destiny in a few minutes. But destiny is not just something for Marvel characters. It's for you too. Your calling, which I'll explain again later, which is equivalent to destiny, your calling, watch this, is the most ancient thing about you. Your calling is the most ancient thing about you. It existed before you did, before your body did, before you came to be. Your calling existed. And, by the way, it is the most eternal thing about you. And what I mean by that is when you operate in your calling, when you offer the contribution to God's world and humanity that only you can offer, when you do that, there is a ripple effect that goes on for generations. You impact somebody who impacts the next generation, and at some point, they may not be able to point to you, and that's because of her, but it is indeed your calling ripple through the generations, which makes it makes your calling the most eternal thing about you. So if your calling is the most ancient thing about you, and it's the most eternal thing about you, I'd call that important. That's what we're going to look at over the next 4 weeks. We're going to help you figure out, and can you figure out your calling? Yeah, we'll get there in just a few moments. I would suggest open up your notebooks, because I'm going to give you some notes, not much, but I'd like you to follow along and turn to page 2. Because I'm going to back up a bit. This illustration of the 2 mountains is not mine. It comes from the writer who used to work for the New York Times and Atlantic Magazine. I think he's launching into something else. David Brooks wrote a book called The Second Mountain. That's where I got this illustration. But there was something about you. Let's talk about when you were really young, when you're in your 20s. Do you remember that? Some of you are probably still in your 20s. When you began your adult journey, you kind of have one mountain you were trying to climb. It's this first mountain, and there are 2 things that you were trying to achieve, and maybe still trying to achieve. First is your identity. There's a lot of effort when you're in your early 20s, late teens, early 20s, mid-20s, and who knows, maybe when you get to be as old as me, you're still trying to figure out, who am I? Who do you say I should be? Who do the people I love think I should be? What is my identity? And we spend an awful lot of energy comparing. Who am I compared to you? Who am I compared to what I think the cultural expectations are for my life? I got to figure out who I am. But that's not the only thing in this first mountain we're trying to achieve. We're also trying to achieve, I'm just going to call it the American dream, and that's going to vary between people. It's inevitably got some form of success that you've ginned up in your head. This is what success looks like, so I'm going to try to achieve that. It may have some sort of career path you're thinking, or it may have some sort of family. I need to have this many kids. I live in this kind of house, a picket fence, a Chevrolet, and a dog, a cat, I don't know what it is, but we're trying to achieve the American dream and our identity. And a lot of people spend a good deal of their life still trying to figure those two things out. But watch this. Inevitably, something happens along the way. Inevitably. It might be pain. And pain can look a lot, it can be physical pain. If we went around the room right now and if I asked how many of you struggle with some sort of physical issue on a regular basis, I bet you a lot of hands would go up, including mine. It may be loss, the loss of a dream, the loss of a relationship, a loss that you're still reeling from. But if it's not pain, it also could be some form of failure, and failure doesn't have to be a big mistake you make. Failure can be you just looking at life and thinking this isn't working. This is not work. It is not what I thought it was going to be. So it feels like failure. So you're climbing this mountain, you're trying to figure yourself out, my identity, and trying to get American dreams. All of a sudden pain hits you, or failure, or maybe even worse, you get to the point of disillusionment. And disillusionment is when somebody says, watch this, is this all there is? Really? Is this all there is? And it's got this tinge of hopelessness and a tinge of cynicism. Is this all there is? All I'm trying to tell you is that you're trying to figure yourself out and trying to get your identity squared away and trying to achieve the American dream, and bam, something hits you. And it may not even be something as negative as pain or as negative as failure or as negative as disillusionment. It might be just something that is normal. The first thing that hits a college or a high school student is the major transition into some other life, either the job or the college, and all of a sudden, oh my word, who am I now? And if it's not that, then it's graduation from college or moving on to another job, who am I now? And if it's not that, oh, am I going to get married? Then I got married, who am I now? And then you have your first child and you go, who am I now? And then your second child, who am I now? And every transition along the way, and then you get to the really big one, empty nesting. Who am I now? We're going to come back to that in a little while. Or you get to be my age and you start asking questions like, in retirement, who am I now? All I'm trying to say is that you're climbing this mountain trying to figure yourself out and you're trying to achieve the American dream, and something happens. And it's not always a bad thing that happens. It's just a thing. It's just a natural transition point. Now, I want you to think about this. For time's sake, normally I would open it up and ask for feedback on this, but I'm going to try to keep our time. When you either have gone through this yourself, or let's actually make it a little less personal. You know somebody, right now, you're thinking of somebody who is there at this, and I forgot to tell you, this is what Brooks calls the Valley of Bewilderment. The Valley of Bewilderment. Now, if I ask you right now, do you know somebody in your life who is right now in the Valley of Bewilderment? And just out of curiosity, I don't like to do this, it's not a good thing to do, but would you just raise your hand if you know somebody that's in the Valley of Bewilderment right now? Okay, that's a lot. All right, so here's the question, and I'm not going to ask you, this is a rhetorical question. What do people do when they get in the Valley of Bewilderment? What do? Well, worst case scenario is they look for things to numb the confusion or cover over the bewilderment. Some people, though, watch this, they think, I need to reclimb the first mountain. I'm going to reinvent myself. And at this point is where relationships fall apart, because they think if I just had somebody else in my life, I'll find a different identity. Or they double down on the American dream and they decide I need to have these things, or I need to change my career, or I need to move to another state, or I need to go somewhere else. And so what they're trying to do is redo the identity and redo the American dream. And inevitably what happens? Bam, back in the valley of bewilderment. Because it's always going to happen again. So you know where this is going because there's another mountain. The option, though, instead of trying to reclimb the first mountain or trying to buzz out and try to cover over your bewilderment, is to climb the second mountain. And I'm hoping that in the next 3 or 4 weeks, you'll actually start considering this question: what is my second mountain? Or, what is my destiny? Because the second mountain is about your destiny or your calling. Again, hang on, I'm going to get some definitions in a minute. But I want to tell you the difference between the first mountain and the second mountain. Because the first mountain, according to Brooks, and I agree with him, the first mountain is, watch this, it's about acquisition. I'm going to get for myself the things that will make me feel good. I will establish my identity so I feel good about myself, or I will get the things that I've determined will give me success. It is acquisition. But watch this, the second mountain is about contribution. It's the difference between acquisition and the second mountain is about contribution. Father Richard Rohr calls this second mountain the further and fantastic journey. Brooks suggests that the first mountain is about establishing the ego and defining yourself, and the second mountain is about losing the ego and shedding yourself on behalf of the world and humanity. Now the question, if it's all that important, would you turn to page 4, please, in the workbook? The operative question is, if the second mountain is that important, and if I have not made it sound important to you, I have not done my job, it should sound important to you at this point, like, heck yeah, I want to know what my second mountain is. Can you find it, or do you accidentally bump into it? Do you one day wake up and go, Eureka, I know what my calling is. Can you figure it out? The answer is yes, you can. And that's what we're doing for this week and the next 3 weeks, because what you're going to see is that your destiny, your calling is at the intersection of 2 incredible truths. One is an awesome truth, and the other is an awful truth. One is an awesome truth, and one is an awful truth. And the awesome truth is about you, that you are unique. Ephesians 2:10, it says this in Ephesians chapter 2, verse 10, that you are God's masterpiece, created in Christ Jesus to do good works which God prepared in advance for you to do. So the awesome truth is that you are a masterpiece. The awful truth is that the world is broken. Let's talk about how unique you are. You have a life story that no one else does. Not even your closest sibling has your life story. Your life story is unique. That makes you a masterpiece. Your personality is unique. Your skills, gifts, and talents make you unique. And your passions make you unique. So right there is your life story is next week. Your personality and your skills will be week 3. And then we'll look at your passions in week 4. We're going to look at you in as much depth as we can get to in this environment here. But remember, that awesome truth is overlapping the awful truth that the world is broken. And for those of you who've been around Grace, you've heard this language for years. There's injustice in the world, and I'm not going to go into, time does not permit me to go into detail on this. There is Isolation or loneliness, by the way, do you know that some people think this is the loneliest time in human history right now? Hatred, I don't know if I need to say anything about that. It's as bad as it's ever been. Pain, we talked about. Decay of the planet. And then this word, enemy, for those of you around Grace say, I thought it was people who are lost. Yeah, that's what the word enemy means. So when I do this talk, I can talk in spiritual terms, but I do this talk for corporations too. And so when I describe lostness to them, I use the word enemy because that's essentially what the word means. It's a person who is separated from norms and found the foundation. They don't have a foundation in their life. In essence, they're lost. They're lost. This is the awesome truth overlapping the awful truth. And what we're going to do is we're going to explore all that you are and compare it to the brokenness of the world. And hopefully we're going to come up with your destiny. But now let's do some definitions. Next page, please. Page 6. Let's define some basic terms. Let's talk about job. Job is an occupation that results in income. Some people love their jobs. Some people hate their jobs. Some people are good at their jobs. Some people aren't so good at their jobs, right? That's a job. Career is a series of jobs over time that focus on a particular area of experience or expertise. It's a series of jobs strung together. It can be a career in finance, a career in retail sales. It can be a career in education, a career in medicine. There's all different kinds of careers that people can have. And again, some people love their careers and some people are meh about their careers. Some people they're crushing it and other people are just getting by. Here's a question. What does your career have to do with your calling? How do they intersect each other? Hang on. I'm going to show you 3 ways that they could intersect each other. Then we get to role. Now, I'm going to pause for a second here because I'm going to get in trouble in about a minute if you don't listen very carefully to what I'm about to say. Role are the key relationships that carry a significant level of responsibility and affection. These are God-given relationships. And in the context here, I'm going to talk about it purely in your context. The roles you play, you have a sibling role. Many of you have a spouse role. You have a husband or a spouse role. And you have kids. And then you have friends. Here's what I want you to hear. Those relationships, and I'm a grandfather. I'm going to tell you what. I don't know relationships could be as powerful as that until I hold those little ones in my arm. That's a powerful thing. Here's where I'm going to get in trouble. Your role is not your calling. I'm going to say that again. Your God-given role, I'm going to get real particular. As a mother, that's not your calling. It's as important as your calling, but it's not your calling. And how do I know this? What happens when that role goes through a dramatic change? And what is the most dramatic change that a mother goes through with those children is when those children no longer need her and they are outside the nest, and that mother, and I've watched it, it also happens with fathers. Empty nesting, you're going, why am I here now? That's why I want you to know that role, which changes, it's important as a mother, it changes, but your calling is different than your role may encompass your calling, but your calling is different. So if it's that important that I get in trouble by taking on this motherhood thing, what is a calling? Well, here's a calling. Calling is a beckoning. If you just look up here for a second, here's a calling. That's God saying, yeah, I've got something for you. It's an invitation to contribute uniquely to humanity and the world in a way that matters and leaves a legacy. That's your calling. What is your calling? We're going to dive into that over the next 3 weeks. Then, do you need more time? Okay. Did I say that your calling and your role are different? I just want to be really clear about that. And some of you are going right now, oh, that's why I feel the way I feel. All right, can we go on? Destiny is a calling. Your destiny is a calling that's refined over time, a calling matured, more fully realized, or more finely honed. I'll give you a minute to write that down. Controversial question number 2, not really controversial. Can a 20-year-old figure out their destiny? No. Can a 20-year-old figure out their calling? Yes. By telling you that, that's why I'm showing the difference. A destiny is when you operate in your calling over a period of time and you find out, this is my contribution to the world. When you continue to operate in that way, watch it, it starts to look like this. It gets more refined over time, more refined over time, more refined over time. When I was 20 years old, would I have pictured my destiny to be what it is today? Absolutely not. But I had an inkling that it was something about developing people and some sort of leadership development. And when watch this, being a pastor was not my calling. Never was. It was my job. It was my career in which I operated in my calling, which got more refined over time to the point where it is right now. I just want to help people live a John 10:10 life. When Jesus said, I've come that you might have life and have abundant life, and to live a life of Ephesians 2:10, to know what your destiny is. That, I couldn't have told you that at 20. So when can you start to think about your destiny as opposed to your calling? It just comes upon you somewhere in your 50s. You start to realize, oh my word, this plane looks like it's going somewhere. And we might be landing this plane. So I once had did this workshop for a national youth organization, and their leader was 75 years old, and he came up to me after the workshop, and he was kind of agitated. And he said, "Look, I'm doing this. This is what I'm doing. This one I'm doing. This one I'm doing." He told me all the things, and he was like try to do it all. And he said, "Are you telling me that at age 75, it's probably time for me to focus on one thing?" And I said, "Heck yeah." And I thought he was going to cry. And by the way, most people my age have not considered this, and that's why a lot of your parents struggle if they have not considered this, because when you get to retirement, you think it's bad. When you enter into empty nesting, when you retire, then who the heck am I? It's important for all ages. First time I ever did this as a group, I did it with 6 NFL football players. They had just retired. One of them attended here. Dallas Clark attended here. And he came to me and he said, "Would you meet with the 6 of us? We've all retired because we don't know who we are now." And when I met with them, I have never seen such big men cry such big tears, because this subject is emotional. I'm already thinking that sometime during the last 25 minutes, some of you have gotten emotional thinking about this stuff, because it is. Destiny is a calling refined over time. There's only one more. That's legacy. Legacy is the identifiable impact of calling practiced over time, mostly but not always has names and faces. Your legacy, when you operate in your calling, which morphs into a destiny, and you start to leave a legacy, most of the time, your legacy will be able to be seen in someone's face. The impact, the contribution that you offer to the world will have an impact on somebody. Yes, your children. Yes, your family. But many, many other people too. That's your legacy. Now, real quickly, and then I'm going to wrap this up. Here's how we're going to get to this point starting next week. We are going to, got to cover this. This is really important, and I'll come back to this next week because I don't have much time. How will your calling be related to your career? I told you I would show you 3 ways. Number 1, your calling and career may be unrelated. Mike is one of my dearest friends. He runs a software company here in central Indiana. That's not his calling. His calling is mentoring. But he's got a career, and he's got 40 employees, and that's what he does. But he has gotten comfortable with the fact that his calling and career are separate. Here's the good news. His calling is financed. Here's the bad news. He wants to do his calling more, but he can't because he's got a career. Okay, see that? Your calling and career may be integrated. Another Mike, he's a science teacher outside of Cleveland, Ohio, and he's the track coach for the school. That's his career. That's not his calling. His calling is somewhere along the way, he developed such a love for high school students that he is like big brother, uncle to every high school student that enters into his life. That's his call. He's almost like he just takes them. I watched him with a group of high schoolers. They adore this man, and they follow his direction in their life. But that's not his career. But you can see how he has integrated his calling and his career. And finally, your calling and career may be identical. Sarah is a physician's assistant in Southern California. When she was in high school, somebody suggested, have you ever thought because everyone knew she was a helper. Have you ever considered nursing or medical? So she went down the road, worked with a physician's office, and my favorite thing about her, and I should tell you this, when she wakes up in the morning, she says something like this: I can't believe they pay me to do this. Because her calling is fully identical with her career. She was a client of mine at one time, and in the middle of our meeting, I told her I had this autoimmune disease. Didn't think anything of it. The next day, I get like a massive email, one of those ones that takes you 20 minutes to read, because overnight she had researched my autoimmune disease and gave me everything to consider of what I need to deal with in my life. Because why did she do that? She cannot help herself because that's her calling. That makes sense? All right. We'll come back to that. The way we're going to go about this, and I'll wrap this up now, we're going to create a quilt. If you turn to page 7, that is going to be your quilt. That's why you need to bring this book back with you next week. On here, we may not fill out, there's actually 2 pages. You probably won't do 2 pages. And we may not even fill out the whole page. But on here, we are going to collect all there is of you that we can. Every bit and piece that you think of this next week in your homework regarding your life story, we're going to cover. We're going to have you do the Enneagram. We're going to cover the characteristics of the Enneagram. You're going to interview 3 people and ask them what they see in you. We're going to put that on this calling quilt. And it may eventually look like that. This was a private client I had. I don't know if it'll say that much, but eventually, and you can see there are dots on there. When I was working with this person, basically what we did and what we're going to do in session 4 is we're going to take a look at your calling quilt, which will be filled in, and I'm going to help you connect the dots. And when we connect the dots together, hopefully you'll have an idea of what your calling is. That's where we're going. But I leave you with this today. You were built to count. As water is made to run downhill, you were placed in a context no one else is, to matter, and that is your destiny. Your homework is essentially on page 10. I want you to do a life mapping exercise based on these 5 questions. and come prepared to talk about and I'm going to help you put on your calling quilt aspects of who you are. We're going to start with your life story. I'm just going to give you a heads up. Next week may be the most important of the 4 weeks. So you don't want to miss next week. Okay? One other thing before I wrap it up is this book I wrote a number of years ago is what this workshop came from. The book was first, and I wrote it for this church and for others. It's called A Why to Live For, Where Your Destiny Meets the Broken Places of the World. All of the concepts that are in this workbook came out of this book. They've expanded into that. If you're interested, they're $10. Happy, I brought some for you. It'll be a good accompaniment. That's it. I'll see you next week. We're going to talk about your life story, the good, the bad, the ugly, and the wondrous, and how all of that shapes your calling. Give me that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dave, for part one. Who's excited about this workshop now? I know, I am. I forgot to tell you one thing earlier. If you were not here last week, I have a folder for you and some handouts, including our calendar for the semester. So those are here on this little table. And feel free to talk to Dave if you're interested in the book or have any questions. I think he might be able to have a couple of minutes.
Oh, yeah, I'm sticking around for a few.
So, okay. Enjoy your time in small groups.